Well, hello there villagers. Today I am going to demonstrate making Cornish pasties. They never come out particularly beautiful, but they do come out tasting lovely. So the first thing you need to do is make some short crust pastry. It's fairly straightforward. We're going to do that first. And then my grandma always used to like to leave her pastry in the fridge for a little while she prepared all the veg and everything that went into the pasty. We may make the pasties today, or we may leave the fridge situation overnight and make the pasties tomorrow, because we have some friends coming for dinner who have Cornish souls, and they will be able to eat my Cornish pasties and pretend that they are locals. Cornish pasties have a protected status in the same way champagne can only be called champagne if it comes from the Champagne region of France. The same is true for Cornish pasties. They can only be called Cornish pasties if they are made within the county. I live in Nottinghamshire, so that's clearly not true normally going along, but I'm at least 4 or 5 generations Cornish, so I think that counts. So the first thing to do is make short crust pastry. You're not going to need a huge amount of ingredients, and we are doubling the recipe today because I've got to make 7 in fact, pasties. And normally what happens to me is that I make the pastry and then about halfway through the making of the pasties realise I haven't got enough pastry and have to make some more. So you will need plain or all-purpose flour, and today I'm going to need 450 grams for what hopefully will be enough for 7 pasties. $450 is a lot more than you think when you're weighing it in. 422, 34, 44, 50. There we go. You also need a pinch of salt. You decide how to measure a pinch of salt, but I cup my hand and pour a little bit in to the very bottom of the well portion in my hand and toss it in. We're not very salty people, so it doesn't really matter. If you're making traditional pasties, the pastry is made from a combination of margarine and lard. But who uses lard anymore? So I'm just combining the figures. So today I will need 200 grams of margarine. Make sure you re-zero your scale. And pop it in. Oh, we might not need the second box of margarine. But we might just for a little bit. Yes, we are going to need it just for a little bit. Isn't that irritating? Why do they put paper in margarine? I don't know, but the first thing I do is throw it away. So if it's important, somebody hopefully will be able to say in the comments. The noise you can hear in the background is my bin. So strictly speaking, you need half and half, lard and margarine, but we're not going to do that. But we are going to use the empty margarine box as a depot. So we can get rid of the scale for a minute. And now we're going to rub together. Rub in the fat. That's what the ye olde B-row recipe cookbook that I've got says. So what you do is sort of break it up into small bits, at least to start it off. and then just rub it together. Same way as if you were trying to make crumble mix or a cake mixture that requires the rubbing in. So to start with, it looks worse before it gets better because it's all squidged together. But you're just trying to mix them so that you can't see where the butter is. It's all just broken down into small little bits. Towards the end of this process, and the lumpy bits are underneath, give your bowl a shake and it brings all the lumps to the surface. I'm a little bit off that yet. I'm not entirely confident that this is going to be enough to make 7 pasties worth. Not big dinner plate size pasties. My papa always used to say his mother made pasties that were so big you had to cook them with the oven door open and the uncooked portion out on a chair next to the oven, and halfway through turn it round and cook the other side. But I think he was having me on. So Cornish pasties traditionally are probably one of the world's first finger foods because they were designed to go down the line with tin miners, and the crimped edge, which I will demonstrate to you how to do, is to hold onto your pasty so that your grubby coal or tin miney hands don't end up in your food, and then you throw that bit away for the gremlin type people who live in the mines, allegedly. There is also a story that pasties would have had the savoury bit that you all know and love at one end and jam at the other, so that you ended up with like savoury and a pudding. But I don't see how that could possibly work without some level of bleeding between the two fillings, and that really wouldn't be very nice. Right, as you can see, I'm just at the sort of very slightly lumpy stage, so watch. See, brings all the lumpy bits to the surface. It also makes a mess if you worked up. But we're getting there. I'm very traditional with my pasties. Even when I have pasties made out, and I don't make my own pasties hardly ever. So this is something special I'm doing specially for you. And then I've invited my Cornish soul friends to come and eat it because, well, if you're going to all this effort, you want someone to enjoy it. But I really don't make them often enough, really, but I used to make them with my grandma when I was very, very little. Okay, I think we're there now with the breadcrumbs. You then need some cold water, not a lot. And this is where you're probably going to need to get your hands in and mix. So if you feel a bit funny about sticking your hands in, do it with a spoon. So in very small dribbles, pour it in and give it a mix. Pour a bit more and give it a mix. You don't want to get past itself where it's then too sticky to use. So if anybody tells you pasties should have peas and carrots in, just say no, because they should not have peas and carrots in. Pasties should have steak, unless you're vegetarian. And then the pasty itself should then be potatoes, swede, and onion, and that's it. I don't even have any of these fancy pasties that you get at places that are chicken tikka or anything. I just can't bring myself to do it. I met a Cornish friend of mine in Bakewell in Derbyshire once, and we decided we would try the pasties there. But even then I couldn't have one of the weird and wonderful pasties. I had to have a proper steak one. It's just not the same. As the fellow in Poldark says, tain't right, tain't proper. Oh, I think I might have guessed my water about right there. So you should notice that it starts to hold itself together. So give it a smush until it's all holding itself together. No, we're going to need a tiny bit more water. So this is why it's better with your hands, really, because you can judge it well. Yeah, I'm sorry, but that is not going to be enough for 7 pasties. Just to double check before I told you anything, I thought I would get the recipe book out and double check how much it thinks per pasty. And bear in mind, this is double. The single version allegedly did 4 people, but they must only be cocktail-sized pasties. And the only person I've known who can make those was my gran, because I end up with far too much filling and they end up trying to explode even when they are big ones. Right, can you see now it's sort of holding itself together. So I think what we're going to have to do is take this batch out, wrap it in cling film, pop it in the fridge, and then make some more. Because it's better to do it and let it rest than in a panic while you're halfway through making the pasties trying to make more pastry. But there we go, that's the first batch. So now off camera I will make another set. Apart from the steak, which is still in the fridge, this is what you will need: a swede, some onions and some potatoes. Peel, chop, put in separate bowls, ready to fill your pasty. Onion, swede, and at the moment chipped potatoes in water, because that will protect them and keep them a little bit fresher until we actually come to use it. The rest will be done by voiceover, because my house is very busy and noisy today. I have the washing machine and the dishwasher on, so it's very loud. So first stage this morning is to cut up the beef, because this is too big. So this is steak. It's sort of cubed already, but we want to make tiny little bits of it. So each portion goes into at least 2, sometimes 4. Pour off the blood down the sink before you get started. Don't need that bit. So we're going to cut it all back up and put it in the box it came from to aid us with our factory style construction project later on. So cut into little bits and put in a box. So here we are, all chopped up and ready to assemble. First things first, oil your baking sheets so that you can plop your pasties straight down on top of it without thinking, oh help, I forgot to oil my baking sheets. Tie your hair up. flour out and distribute liberally all over your worktop to stop the pastry from sticking. So my grandma's technique of putting your pastry in the fridge does seem to have worked. It's given it a lot more structural integrity, so I at least understand why we do that now. And despite the fact this is a double batch, it made just enough for 6 pasties and a little bit of extra. So it's cold, so give it a little bit of a knead around and warm up. And flatten with a rolling pin. Make sure you cover your rolling pin with flour so that it doesn't stick to your pastry and tear it to shreds. This is clearly too big, so we're getting rid of half of it for now. And off we go again. So keep turning it so that it doesn't stick and you don't end up with a really weird shape. So roll it a bit, turn it over. And you're looking for a reasonably thin but still fairly structurally sound piece. Do keep turning it over and re-flouring your surface, because at this stage the last thing you want is for it to tear to shreds because it's got stuck to something. Because I suspect you will cry. Bit over the pastry again, because the last thing you want is your rolling pin sticking to it. So as you can see, we are now nice and thin. So the next stage is to find a dinner plate. Your pasty will be half of that diameter by the end of it. Cut round your pastry. I'm only going to show you one, but I will show you the crimping twice so that you can see it being done at slow motion. So the rest of that can go over there for now. This is now your pasty. So we're going to fill the pasty and then fold it over. This is the time to bring back all those veg we prepared earlier. So our bowls of potatoes, swede and onions. And we're now going to make all our pasties in a sort of factory style fashion. So you don't need the rolling pin anymore because this is your pasty. And we're going to fill it in the following combination. A handful, like that, dumped out on the pastry. So a handful of potato in the middle, and the swede, and some onion. Stop there if you're vegetarian, and the meat if you are not. Salt and pepper to taste. I didn't do any salt and peppering because I had a mixed combination of guests coming, so they could salt and pepper their own. In this little ramekin, plop 1 egg and give it a little whisk. This is to use as a sort of glue to seal your pasty shut, and then give it a nice glaze on the outside afterwards before it goes in the oven. That's a beautiful colour egg, isn't it? Look at that. So bring back the pastry brush from before. The fact that it's got some oil in it won't make any difference. And brush the top edge. You don't need to do round the whole edge, just the top edge. And this is the tricky part. You're going to have to try and fold it over and not lose all your contents. Push all the contents back in, gently press down over the edge to sort of contain your filling. Oh, catch that bit. Press down, and now we will start the crimping. It is tricky and does take practice, so please don't be sad if it doesn't work very well to start with. So it's a sort of pull away and fold over motion. But to get started it's a bit tricky, as you can see. And then just sort of pull away and fold over, pull away and fold over, until you've got it all tidied away and it sort of looks like this. These were the best pasties I had ever made, and I don't know whether it was just because I was doing it for filming. I haven't actually made pasties for years. So pull away and fold over. And fold over. And sort of pinch it together as you're going along. Over and over until you get to the end. Pasties sometimes break open in the oven, or before you even put them in the oven. All you need to do is put a little pastry patch and then just glue it on with your egg. But I was very impressed with my pastry work there. Beautiful pasty. Now I have to make 5 more. Now what shall I do with all the leftover pastry? Well, as a child I used to be given a bit of leftover pastry when I made pasties with my grandma, and the answer is jam tarts. More flour, squidge your pastry all together. Pastry is normally very forgiving and will behave unless it's too dry. Right, more rolling pin action. And then we find a suitable shaped cutter. This can be a cup or something of that sort of size. So they're Yorkshire pudding tins and a little cookie cutter. I have made them before with an upside down cup. It basically means whatever you have to hand that happens to be round. Plop it out and plop it into the bottom of your Yorkshire pudding tin. Make as many as you can out of the pastry. Keep going, and eventually you are going to have to re-smush your pastry back together and see how many more you can make out of the next smushing. Oh, no, still one there. So re-squidge, flatten it out a bit. Can we get 2 out of that? 1 with the cutter, and 1 that will be a sort of mongrel arrangement that's just been beaten to death by hand. Use whatever jam you have handy. This is left from icing my Christmas cake at Christmas time, because apricot jam doesn't taste anything underneath marzipan, apparently. So we're filling up our little pastry cases. You can then put another pastry case on top if you felt so inclined and make jam tart pie type things, but I didn't have any more pastries, so this is what I did. They go in the oven for about 25 minutes. Look at that, even the jam lid's handy. Happy even. Right, now we brush our pasties with the egg wash. I only did 1 to show you, but I did actually do them all. And then they go in the oven for 1 whole hour at about 170 or 340 Fahrenheit. Now then, what shall we do with the filling that's all left over? Because apparently I over-prepared. Not evenly, as you can see. Get a very big saucepan. Plop everything in, all at the same time. We don't believe in messing about in this house. So onion, quite a lot of potato, and the swede. You can even put the meat in, and then just boil it silly. until all the veg is soft and the meat is cooked. Add 1 stock cube and some water. That reminds me, I need to put stock cubes on the shopping list because that's the last one in that box. They are fiddly to unpeel. So break it apart. Make sure it all goes in. And now we add some water. There isn't really a measurement for the water so much as make sure most of your veg is submerged. The more water, the thinner your soup. And I'm not keen on thin soup really, I like a chunky broth. So 2 of those, they are 500 mils each. And now we move to the stove top. So you're looking for a sort of medium to high-ish heat. Give it a stir, and then you can leave it for half an hour or so, and then blend. Because of the meat, it does look questionable. Here's the pasties in the oven. Oh, they look nice. Here they are out, waiting to be eaten. Here's Nick eating it.
My turn.
Yep.
Mmm.
Who's the best?